The easiest thing I've done was to get out from under the labels and to live the life that I live. The most difficult thing I've ever done was to believe that I can do it.
What's the difference?
The difference is that when you don't know what's impacting you, and it's something that's holding you down and you're not aware of it. The great anthropologist Margaret Mead was in a restaurant in London, and a guy was serving her and said, "There's several Americans here tonight." And she said, "Is that right?" "Yeah." So let me know when you serve them dessert. I'll tell you exactly how many are here. He said, "Oh, you couldn't possibly." And so he came back and said, "Okay, I've done it." And she got up and she walked around and she came back and she said, "There are around 25 here." And he looked at the roster. "How did you know that?" Say, "In America, we eat differently from you when we eat a dessert. You eat it from the crust toward the tip. We eat it from the tip toward the crust. When you eat a slice of pie, how do you eat yours?"
Definitely, yeah, from the tip back to the crust, for sure.
Yeah, okay, and so there are things that when you, in my situation, when you live in a dominant culture that is designed to destroy your sense of self and your belief in yourself, and you have to learn ways in which you can begin to connect with this power that you have within yourself to handle where you are. The key is to be constantly in a perpetual process of discovering the truth of who you are and fighting constantly to look for ways in which you can escape the inner conversation. I speak to audiences around the world, and I train speakers as well, and I tell them that when you speak, that there's an objective that you want to achieve when you speak to an audience, because how people live their lives is a result of the story they believe about themselves. So you as a speaker, when you speak in this program, when people see you, what you do is distract, dispute, and inspire. You distract people from their current story with your guests and the questions that you ask. Through the process of the ongoing questioning and the way in which they respond and the things they have learned, you dismantle their current belief system and inspire them to create a new chapter with their lives. And so, but that's an ongoing process of constantly interrupting that conversation, what psychologists call your self-explanatory style, because life is going to beat up on you in so many ways, and many things, they come back, negative thoughts and how you feel about yourself, they don't die. They come back once you stop doing the maintenance work on your mind, listening to motivational messages, going to seminars and workshops, spending time quietly listening to the still small voice within. Who am I really? Is this really me? Am I giving my best? Am I just reflecting what's around me? Because all of these various things affect how we show up in life. And so having a strategy to continuously find ourselves reaching higher. Robert Schuller had a book, is not very popular, but I loved it. It's called Peak to Peak, U-P-E-A-K to P-E-E-K, because you're constantly reaching higher to find out and discover your better self.
Yeah, I want to talk about that difference between, so you have the notion of figuring out who you really are, and I assume you mean beneath the labels. So people are telling me that I'm not smart, but that's not necessarily true. Mm-hmm. So I want to get down to that layer of what I'm really capable of. But you also talk about, we have this profound ability to change, and you talk about people needing to be relentless, like to relentlessly pursue that growth. I find that juxtaposition incredibly interesting, where you've got, there is a real you, which maybe you would call potential, mm-hmm. and then there is the actualized potential. Is that how you see it, or is there something else there?
Absolutely, there's a real you. Richard Wright said it best. He said, "The impulse to dream has slowly been beaten out of me through the experiences of life." So when you live in a culture that is designed to destroy your sense of self, where you are marginalized, where you have a feeling of being hopeless and powerless, and you're terrorized. I remember going downtown with my mother, and I saw a water fountain. I think I was about 5 years old, and I ran and I drank from the water fountain. All of a sudden, she grabbed me by the neck and said, "Don't you ever do that again," and start punching me in the back of my head and my face, and got me down on the ground, was punching me relentlessly. And I said, "Mama, please, it's me, Mama, it's me," with this crazed look in her eyes. And then a white policeman came, and he had a nightstick in his hand. He was hitting it in his left hand. Oh. He said, "Okay, all right, you beat that little nigger boy enough. Now, I won't have to beat him with this nightstick." And he walked away laughing. And my mother broke down and started crying and saying, "Leslie, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I said, "Mama, why'd you beat me like that?" She said, "These water fountains are for white only, son. And if that cop had hit you with his nightstick, he would have to kill me. I'd have fought him till he killed me, and I'd left you and your brothers and sisters by themselves to raise themselves. I'm so sorry." And the book called Learned Optimism, Seligman talk about the fact that between ages 0 and 5, we determine what's available to us and what's not available to us. And so that was a defining moment. I knew there are certain things I could not do, certain places I could not go. They used to have signs on Miami Beach that said, "Jews, dogs, and coloreds not allowed." And so now you have to operate within the constraints of the dominant society and the things that they've created for you. And it's a challenge to see yourself beyond that and to work to get outside of that, even after those laws have changed, because that has become so much a part of you. You unconsciously operate within the parameters of what has been put in place. Like you're driving on the expressway, the 405, and you'll get off on an exit that you weren't going in that direction, but you unconsciously did it because you've done it so many times that many people, because they're not making a conscious, deliberate, determined effort to think outside of what life has thrown at them, they end up doing the same thing over and over and over again. Einstein said that thinking that has brought me this far has created some problems that this thinking can't solve. And so through relationships, through reading, through studies, through goals and dreams beyond your comfort zone, it allows you to begin to live out of your imagination as opposed to out of your history. Disney said, the imagination is a preview of what's to come. And so as a kid, I dreamed a lot about taking care of my mother. I used to go with her to work to clean homes, and she kept her children, and she cooked for these wealthy families. My mother could bake a sweet potato pie so good you couldn't eat it with your shoes on. You had to take your shoes off so you could wiggle your toes. And I used to look at these big, beautiful mansions and said, "Mama, what is it, Leslie? When I become a man, I'm gonna buy you a big, beautiful home just like this." "Oh, you don't have to do this." I said, "I know, but you didn't have to adopt us either." And you did. And so I'm here with you because of two women. One gave me life, the other one gave me love. God took me out of my biological mother's womb and placed me in the heart of my adopted mother. And because of her example and my love for her and the passion that I felt in my heart, I've got to do something to make her proud. I've got to do something to put myself in position to be able to take care of her. That drove me. Nietzsche said, if you know the why for living, you can endure almost anyhow.
Jesus, man, that was a lot. I want to go back to this notion of dominant culture. You look so young. I forget how long you have been walking this planet.
75. I'm 75 years old.
It's fucking incredible, man. So
thank you.
You have so much optimism. You're so positive. You're so quick to laugh. Going back to the way that the dominant culture can dismantle so many people, what are ways that the dominant culture is dismantling people's creativity, their very spirit today that people should be watching out for?
Well, just think about if you were an immigrant and you're watching television and you see people who can come from white cultures with no problems whatsoever, like the president's in-laws, but brown people coming from other countries, they're separated from their children and put in cages, and there's a silence. There's not millions of people protesting and saying, this is not who we are as a country. This is inhumane. I believe that all of us have a responsibility that we want to live a life that will outlive us. The work that you're doing. There are people that you will never meet, whose lives that you've transformed, that you're living a life that will outlive you. Just think about the fact that this program has given a lot of people hope, and there's hope in the future. It gives you power in the present. Every 40 seconds, someone commits suicide. But because of something you say or some guest that you've invited, and as they share their story, you interrupt that story of being hopeless and powerless and not wanting to be here anymore. And because they took the time to watch, you create an experience. Oliver Wendell Holmes said that once a man or woman's mind has been expanded with an idea, concept, or experience, it can never be satisfied to going back to it.